The first is client services, right? What are we delivering on to our clients? I envision a very clear and repeatable process for all different clients. So we have a CPG client onboarding, we have a standard and SaaS client onboarding, and every one of our employees has an understanding of what systems they're using, how they're doing month-end close tasks, where they're doing month-end close tasks, how they're documenting notes, and everyone's doing that in the same way. So I think client services is one piece. Falling into that is, you and I talked this week about how do we manage uncategorized expenses. There's all these different platforms and softwares. Yes, we need to figure out which one's going to work for us. That's a piece of it. So client services, we could expand on that quite a bit. There's a lot there. Another is like internally setting culture. And in culture, it's setting our vision and our goals. What are you responsible for? What am I responsible for? And what are the team responsible for? How do we measure employee happiness, employee engagement, and satisfaction, and set our team as we grow up for success?
What up, what up?
Greetings.
It's Friday. We got the hair down. Vibes are flowing. We're going to talk about firm ops today. This is your world.
My favorite.
So we can start just by diving into early firm ops pre-Stacey, which was just a wild time.
The wild, wild west. Your hair was down. You were dancing around by yourself.
Oh, zero accountability. Yeah. It was great until it wasn't. Yeah, good times.
Okay, all right. So I want to start by asking you, like pre-Stacey, what in your mind, how did you categorize the ops function? Like when it was just you?
Yeah, I mean, ops was first priority. So I incorporated on June 3rd, and I didn't pull in $1 of revenue until August 12th. And
but who's counting?
What's that?
They're very specific.
It is specific because these dates stick in my head. You don't forget those. You started on March 15th. I'm not going to forget that. I might forget my kid's birthday, but those dates they stick in the head. But the reason for that really is because I didn't want to take on any clients ahead of having an infrastructure that could support quality service. And so it was 2 full months dedicated to what are the right systems that need to be in place, what are the right workflows, and I did not get it right out the gates. And I think it's a continual progress either way, but we can kind of dive into what I was looking at and how I was approaching that, if that would make sense.
Yeah, I mean, I want to get a sense of like, how did you even know what you knew? Because you had experience in CAS services, right? You had that firm exposure previously. So you had a little bit of a taste. But when you were like, oh, what are my options? Did you have people you talked to? What was like your research process? What did that look like?
Yeah, so research really came from the concept of like building within community, building out in the open. And I say that because the historical mindset of building an accounting firm, running a firm, has always been kind of behind closed doors. This is our process. This is our workflow. We're not going to share this with anybody else, even though everybody's going through the same rhythms, using the same softwares, and generally have the same processes. And so I really did my market research by listening to podcasts and setting up calls with other firm owners who were overly generous with their time and recommendations on what systems they use and how they work. And so it was just kind of a deep dive into the ops world of like, all right, how do I get this off the ground? How do I actually invoice customers? How do I set up a month-end workflow for month-end close, things like that?
You make a good point about this open community, because that's been the biggest surprise to me moving into the new CAS world. And I've just been met with such grace and welcoming across different industry leaders, and everyone is so willing to help and just share their learnings and mistakes. And all the podcasts that, I've also dive deep into all of those things. So it's been really enlightening to have this community. I did not expect at all to have, this much information available so easily.
It's amazing, and I think there was some degree of a breakthrough in it must have been September, October of last year, when Marissa Jones, who runs a firm out of Santa Barbara, called Carpe Digits, she reached out to me, was like, "Hey, I kind of like what you're doing on LinkedIn. Can we just set up some time to chat?" And so we set up a call, and she was kind of just gauging if I was cool or not, which is totally fair. And at the end of the call, she was like, "Hey, would you?" Yeah, the jury's still out. Yeah. She was like, "Would you be interested in joining a group of us on a trip to Park City in January?" And I was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, I don't deserve to sit in that room with these other firm owners." And that's where I really got to meet, Kenji and Matthew and Nicole and Scott and Blake Oliver and this whole crew that was just so fun to hang with. Dan Luthi, Zach Call. But you better believe I was asking so many questions.
Well, it's funny you say that. I didn't know, first of all, Marissa had that connection. So thanks, Marissa. But when you were there, like the second morning, I think you and I had our second intro call. Yeah. And I remember you vividly saying that. You're like, "I don't belong here. I am just sponging it up. I'm not drinking because I need to be sharp and at it and learn and just take in all this information." Oh, it's so funny to think back to it now.
Yeah. Well, that's not completely true, because I did have a handful of drinks, but I didn't have any sleep because I had the mentality of wanting to stay up as late as I could to hang with the late night crew, but also wake up as early as I could to hang with the morning coffee crew. So I maybe got 2-3 hours of sleep each day during that trip, just so I could absorb those moments late at night with Kenji and Nicole and Scott, who are night owls, and then also 5 a.m. coffee with Marissa, which were equally amazing. But a lot of that kind of helped shape operationally how I think or was thinking about the internal function of this business.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Yeah. So this is now you're thinking about different softwares to service your first client. What specific softwares, or even operationally anything outside of software, did you want to have in place before you brought on that first one on August 12th?
Yes. So what I was really focused on was two things at that point in time. The first one was a really good billing and proposal software, or like the quote to cash process, which I stood up Ignition for and has been a great tool for us. And then I heard from everybody else, I need a firm management software. If I'm going to run a company efficiently, firm management software. So at that point in time, back in August of last year, I stood up Carbon. And
I think you should do a little bit of an overview of what Ignition is, a little bit, like give a little more love to Carbon and Ignition.
Yeah. So Practice Ignition at the time, now called Ignition, they are a full service from proposal creation and presentation to collection and billing platform. So effectively, they manage that entire function of the business, or you manage it using that tool. And it's a highly efficient tool to run an AR-free business. And what was beautiful in that for me is I saw examples where entire firms had a person dedicated solely to AR collection. I was like, I don't want to make that a part of my business. So that was Ignition. On the Carbon front, it was analysis of firm management software. How do you manage your monthly tasks and workflows for the work that needs to get done that is primarily client facing? And then how do you, in their language, triage your email in order to make sure that client requests are being tracked and fulfilled in a very efficient manner?
And to add to that, the goal in that firm management software is you have a whole team, a lot of employees who need to share information, share projects, share visibility of everything that happens in and out with client information. Every email that's sent, text messages that come through for crazy providers that offer that, and also the work that needs to get done. Having that visibility enables the work to continue to get done with or without specific people assigned to that project. So it eliminates the institutional knowledge that can be left in people's heads, which is very common, I'd say, especially in our industry.
Totally. And for me, when it was just me here, it wasn't as critical from the standpoint of like I had full visibility. I knew every single client. I knew where things were at. And so I could track things in my head, which isn't scalable at all. And my intent was to build something that was scalable. And at the time, Carbon was not a tool that was really efficient for me. Carbon, as I learned later on, is more of a tool built for 50, 100 plus individual companies or firms. And so I transitioned off of Carbon fairly quickly. Very, very hefty system, very powerful system, but overkill for what stage we were at that point in time. And so it was then that I looked into other tools, and I had a great chat with Marie Green, who is a highly proficient user of Teamwork. And so I stood up Teamwork. And that was a good system for tracking things. I think it was very feature rich, almost to a point of complexity that was a little bit challenging, but also it may not have been the right accounting specific month-end close tool that we needed at that point in time.
Yeah, because Teamwork is used for across the board service-based companies. So you see a lot of like marketing campaigns if you're doing advertising for a client, and you have different projects that are start to finish. You can do Gantt charts, but they don't recur. They're not the same project that happens every single month. So that can be its downfall of having to manually recreate the same exact project each month for our accounting-based work, which is very duplicative in nature.
Yeah, definitely. And I've also kind of omitted to some degree, and it's important to highlight, the actual month-end close process too was certainly a series of Google Sheets and reporting softwares that we liked. And while it was good, it was still relatively manual from a checklist perspective in terms of knowing who was doing what project, what task. So when you came on board, I wouldn't necessarily say it was duct taped together, but it was fairly duct taped together. And all of the institutional knowledge of where clients were at was all up here in my head. And so trying to get that out into a system that made sense, that was efficient, and just creating a little bit more automation in the month-end close process is really where we started to accelerate after you came on board.
Okay, so you have Practice Ignition for pre-sale scoping, but also for invoicing customers on a recurring basis. Then you have a work tool in Carbon, and then Teamwork, and then you had internal reporting softwares for clients. Want to hit on that as well?
Yeah, so from a reporting perspective, there are so many options that exist in market. And so I probably did between 30 and 40 demos of just tools in the reporting and FP&A space. I got a lot of insight from Paul Barnhurst on LinkedIn. I had a great chat with him about what tools he's seeing in the FP&A space. And so I looked at Fathom, at Reach, at Pry, Finmark, Forecaster, Giraffe, Mosaic, Clockwork. The list is somewhat endless. But ultimately, we found for us that Reach reporting was a little bit more of a customizable tool that could allow us to deliver that type of service that really connected with our clients. And that's one that's been consistent from the get-go. Love the interface with QBO, love the linking to Google Sheets and customized data sets. That's been a great tool for us.
Love it.
On the FP&A front, it really came down to what system is most intuitive. Can you hand over to a client and they can easily understand, while also having the necessary complexity across a multitude of industries, and creating that visibility across both the team side, then also the client side. And so Giraffe for us was that tool. Of course, this is a constant evolution and research of other tools in the market as well.
Totally, yeah. You make a good point across industries, because forecasting in CPG versus SaaS is just wildly different. And
totally.
Having a tool that can do a good job at each of those different industries is actually pretty challenging to find.
It is, and I think it's important to note too that there is no perfect single tech stack that exists. A lot of these tools make great sense for a lot of our clients, and we use highly efficiently. But there's also a lot of other great tools out there that other accountants use on a regular basis that create great efficiencies for them. And that could be on the internal workflow side, it could be on the external reporting and delivery side. But there's no one magic tech stack. It's a matter of doing the demos, putting the time in to understand what makes the most sense for your niche, your service, your firm, and then moving forward with that.
Yeah, there's also, I think, a good balance in always having a pulse on the market and what is available, what tools are out there, being willing and able to explore those, implement when necessary, but on the flip side, not constantly changing your tech stack to the point where it's detrimental in efficiencies and progress. So it's kind of, I think this is going to be something we toy with, I think, forever of when does it make sense for us to switch for benefits over whatever we're utilizing day one.
Totally. And one of the tools that we use today that we picked up, early on when you joined, we could probably say this episode is sponsored by LiveFlow. LiveFlow is an automated QuickBooks to Google Sheet connector. But
just like plug in Blake or David Leary's voice.
Yeah, or the Matthew May. This episode is sponsored by Verify IQ. We are unaffiliated with, whatever.
This is my favorite Imperial Stout.
Yeah, right. But to your point, he actually loves stouts. That was a great call out. But to your point, if evaluating what pieces of tech and software make their way into your normal rhythms of everyday workflow and process, it is critical to evaluate those before baking them in. And so any software that we're evaluating, bringing on board that's going to be integral to our workflow, we're asking questions like, how much cash do you have on hand? What's your runway? Have you raised capital? Things like that, because we want to ensure that our risk is mitigated when we're partnering with new companies like that.
Totally. Okay, so we got pre-sales, we have work management, we have actual productizing, right? What are you delivering to the client on a monthly basis? It's FP&A tools, it's reporting tools to present the financial data. I think that's mostly where you were at. Maybe from bank rec and everything. Obviously we're using QuickBooks for most of the clients, but
yeah. I was going to say on the back end is QuickBooks, and we have a handful of Xero clients. Gusto is another big component to tech stack in terms of payroll, HR management. We use Gusto internally, and many of our clients also use Gusto, so that's a big part of it. And then you could really dive into a whole slew of other banking platforms, whether it's Mercury or Brex or Bill Pay, Bill.com, Ramp, Divvy. You could really go down the deep end there, but we'll keep it to our firm for now.
So you're there, you have it in a fairly good spot. I will say when you and I started, I kind of wanted to lift up the hood a bit and see what was happening before I was ready to fully commit. So I came in and just, you gave me full access to mostly everything. I was very impressed. I was like, okay, this guy, he knows what he's doing. He's good at documenting. He's a good accountant. I was very impressed by the schedules you were doing, the work you were providing to clients. So kudos to you that made my decision a little bit easier. So I think you did do a great job at building to the point that you needed. So I joined March 15th of this year. It's almost not even 5 months ago. That's crazy. And I think when we talk about operations, obviously systems is a big part of it, but I wanted to expand that a bit more and think about like setting a vision, setting the strategy, setting goals, identifying ways we can improve for that long run. And at the time, you had a great website, you had vision, values, but it became clear to us for our primary asset, we really want to do a rebrand. We felt really good about investing in who we are, and kind of bringing that to the forefront in the best of our ability, which meant hiring an outsourced team to do that. Part of that project was defining our mission, vision, and values. So when I first joined, my goal day one was, let's set our objectives. And one of those objectives was the full rebrand, including mission, vision, values, redefining that, who we are, what we want to accomplish. Big project there. And the second of those, did you want to say something?
Well, I was just going to say it was interesting from day one in terms of starting to align around goals and vision together, because there was a mental shift for me occurring of like, this is no longer an I thing, this is a we thing. And then once we start to set those goals, we talk about this rebrand, but also in parallel, we had this internal ops and workflow management project going on, which I'm sure that's the direction you were going, but we were able to delineate roles really well in that regard, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I think it was easy for me to come in because I had no work yet. You come in like, I don't.
Okay, you had a little bit of work.
I had work for sure, but to some extent, a lot of the work was you were managing, and obviously I took a lot of that on. But I was able to come in and have time and space to think about those larger items. And yes, it was mission, vision, values, who we are, who we want to be. This was kind of like the outward facing one. And then we're looking inward and saying, okay, let's think about our cohesiveness and our internal visibility and efficiency. It's kind of how I was looking at it. And I think this is going to be how I look at the business forever. And I said, okay, we need to revamp our tech stack and make sure we are automating everything and eliminating multiple entries as best we can. I wanted to revisit the workflow management. I didn't necessarily, I didn't dislike teamwork at the start.
Right.
I just wanted to make it better. I was like, there were things we could optimize in teamwork to make it fit what our business needed. And then it was just standardizing. How do we standardize our existing client data offering to then scale everything with that same standardization? Yeah.
And, I think it's important to note too is, we're in the professional services space. We're not a venture capital backed rocket ship that we can pour all of this time and money into just hiring a bunch of people and building it out the gates the way we want, which is funny because when we were going through those initial goals, you had inherited teamwork and the things that I had set up in teamwork, which was okay. It was fine. But your initial goal, I think it was maybe like 2 weeks. Let's get teamwork to the place where we feel really good about it and everything's buttoned up. Like that, I think I remember 2 weeks being the target. And
I get a little ambitious sometimes.
Yeah,
I will say, when I found a product that worked, it was a week to get it up there.
Okay, so let's talk through that. So your initial goal was to take what you inherited and optimize it. We just through discovery in a month-end close process or two, we opted to move in a different direction.
Yeah, so I think for me, you, Roman, you had done your assessment, and there's some part of you you're like, I need to learn it for myself too. And you had explored carbon, and you landed with carbon and others, and then you landed with teamwork. And I said, I want to just do it through my lens as well. I want to know the industry. So I kind of redid that assessment, talked to leaders, talked to people, figured out what people are working on. The primary frustration I had with teamwork is, like I said earlier, the recurring tasks weren't easy. And then there was this thing I can't really explain, but I felt like the system wasn't easy to use. It was a feeling. And I was like, is this user error? Is it me? Because if it's me, I'm going to be pissed at myself because I feel like I'm good at tech and I can keep up with stuff. I'm like, am I getting old? Well,
I think that was because of just how feature rich it was. Like the teamwork as a platform has so much to offer, but it takes a lot of wrangling. And so I think you were looking for that simplicity that just didn't exist in a native way to the system.
That's fair. And it was manual for us to have to create the accounting focused items. I talked to 2 different people who were using it, loved it. And I said, how are you doing this? What are you saying out here? And they made it work. They love it. But for me, I was like, I don't want to take that many steps to set up the same thing each month. I don't want to do any steps to set up the same thing each month. So that brought us back to the drawing board. I did a bunch of demos. The first demo, are you ready to hype this up? The first demo I did with Financial Sense.
That was the first one?
The first one I did with them. So not the first one I did. I tried Carbon, obviously. Same feeling as you, is a little bit too robust for us at this stage. Jetpack.
Keeper.
Keeper, yep. Which is, all of these have pros and cons to
Canopy.
Yep. Yeah, I did find my list of what I looked at. I don't remember. But, going into Financial Sense, it was just so easy for me to link the clients, create one workflow, copy it forever. There's your workflow. There's your checklist. You have email integration. You can save all the documents. You can link to all like the Google Docs and G Sheets and external. And for me, my end goal is I wanted to look at a singular report and page and know exactly where every client across our firm is in the close process. And they have that with their reporting feature, which just every single project that's open, the progress towards completion. And that was very hard for me to get out of a few different softwares.
Yeah. And so when you were going through those demos and you were exploring what system might make sense for us, what were the key criteria you were looking for as far as outcome during those demos to help you make a decision on how to move forward?
Oh, I've got to look up. I had a matrix I made. What I was looking at.
Part of the time, like when you were going through that decision making, I was at Scaling New Heights too, and I was meeting all of these people in person. Financial Sense, Canopy, Carbon, other firm management tools, and I'm just slacking you like, hey, check this out, check that out, distracting you to no end. But I had a chance to meet Sharam, the Financial Sense team, and in parallel, you were in the process of demoing that as well.
Yeah, I have a whole checklist. I wish I could remember what it was. I wanted an integration or ability to integrate with Ignition, with the sales platform. I wanted an integration with QuickBooks to have automate the customers, the clients that we're creating in QuickBooks.
I think from an overarching perspective, you were looking for that native simplicity of understanding that correlated with our industry. So something that was industry specific, we could onboard in a very efficient manner, and that when new employees and our clients come on board, they're not just overwhelmed by the sheer amount of capabilities that a system has. It can quickly and easily understand what they're doing.
Yeah, and I think when we think about the simplicity, I was looking at it through the lens of a first-year staff.
Yeah.
I wanted someone who knows nothing about accounting to be able to very easily log into our system and say, this is what I have to do today. And the most intuitive one we found was Financial Sense. And we just, this is actually July is our first close on Financial Sense. And I went into the July close feeling so prepared. I knew exactly what all our clients needed to have done and when. We had client tasks lined up to be sent out to clients for bank statements that they needed to send to us, just whatever we needed from clients to do our work. And it's going swimmingly. I feel like I know exactly where we are, what's outstanding, when I need to step in if something's delayed. I have no complaints today.
Yeah, and we're still early on in the process, and we're not sitting here shilling for Financial Sense either. It's just what platform worked best for us, and it's similar to the mission, vision, values to other area components of the business where like there's constant exploration and constant improvement being made to the company as a whole. And so we've opted to partner with Financial Sense, and it's been a great experience thus far. What does the next iteration of ops look like, and what are those things that you're thinking through now, about a year into the business, with where we're at with 3 of us going on 4? What are the things that you want to make sure are rock solid as we continue to scale in this early phase?
I can try to boil it down probably 2, maybe 3 categories. The first is client services, right? What are we delivering on to our clients? I envision a very clear and repeatable process for all different clients. So we have a CPG client onboarding, we have a standard and SaaS client onboarding, and every one of our employees has an understanding of what systems they're using, how they're doing month-end close tasks, where they're doing month-end close tasks, how they're documenting notes, and everyone's doing that in the same way. So I think client services is one piece. Falling into that is, you and I talked this week about how do we manage uncategorized expenses. There's all these different platforms and softwares. Yes, we need to figure out which one's going to work for us. That's a piece of it. So client services, we could expand on that quite a bit. There's a lot there. Another is like internally setting culture. And in culture, it's setting our vision and our goals. What are you responsible for? What am I responsible for? And what are the team responsible for? How do we measure employee happiness, employee engagement, and satisfaction, and set our team as we grow up for success? I want to invest, and I'm determined to invest in that from day one, to make sure that we are doing it in the right way for the growth and scale. And we have a lot of work to do in that area. I mean, we have a ton of ideas, you and I, but we haven't fully defined how we want that to look.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about building that out.
And those 2 things that you mentioned both relate back to our core values. The first 2 that you mentioned, in terms of service par excellence, so client service and how and why that system enhances our ability to serve clients well. And then ship daily, that clear visibility into what everybody's responsible for and the tasks that they have, allowing them to take ownership of those things that they're doing. And if you haven't, go back, listen to our first episode where we go into detail on those core values as to why they're important to us.
I'd say the culture piece, I would connect that with good neighbor. And then the third one I didn't mention that I have in my head is like visibility and measurement. I want to measure billable hours. How effective are we with our clients? How quickly are we doing things? Are our employees at capacity? At what stage do we assess when we're ready to hire? And all of that obviously feeds into culture and happiness and engagement. But that one I would probably link more closely to ship daily. We're making sure we're measuring that on an ongoing basis so we can maintain that ship daily value.
Yeah. That's good. Well, that's a good 30-minute overview as to kind of where we're at today and the journey that we've been on. There will be constant conversation around this subject of firm operations and deep dives into how we're doing what we're doing. But this is a good launch point, and super excited to see, where this iteration gets us.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear from people of what we can talk about, what would be helpful topics. We are very transparent. We're all in it together. So Roman and I are very open to discuss our wins and losses and share anything that we can that can be valuable.
Yeah. Until next time, you can find us at fullsendfinance.com or at Stacey Feldman CPA or Roman Villard CPA on LinkedIn. Looking forward to hearing from you.